from the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's TAN Talk.
When I think back on all the crap I learned in high school.
Good evening. This is Picture This.
It's a wonder I can think at all.
Good to be with you tonight. Jeff Donald, myself, Lou Donald, talking about photography. And what do you think we'll do tonight?
Well, we've got some interesting topics. We may have a guest calling in. There's some exciting things going on in the photography community, Tampa, next weekend. And one of the organizers of that, we may get a phone call from him. So we'll see how that goes. But you and I have got a couple of our regular things. I'm going to talk about a few things that happened in photography this week. 29 years ago, some things on the Florida Center for Creative Photography's website, some things that are going on. Last weekend, took in a really nice photography show at the Museum of Fine Art in St. Pete that's still going on. So we've got some few things to talk about. What have you got?
Well, I thought we would talk tonight about accessories.
Okay, that sounds fun.
And in particular, are they a necessity or an accessory?
A little this or that, so to speak. All right, we can figure that out. We can play that game. Sounds like fun, actually. So we'll get on to that. A few things on our calendar at the Florida Center. We've got some upcoming classes for folks starting in April. We finished our March classes, but April we've got a number of classes starting, so be sure and check out our website, www.flccp.org. And if you've got questions tonight for us, by all means, you can call us. In Pinellas County, it's 727-441-3000, or toll-free, 866-826-1340. And we'll even take your questions and comments via email. If you want to email us, address it to picturethis.questions. Make sure you get that S on the end at gmail.com. And I hope you're watching us on the internet or listening to us live on 1340, 1350, 1400. And so some things we got going on in this area is next Saturday is a big event. Jim Swallow and his Florida Society, I forget the exact name. I should probably apologize to Jim for that. But it's called Photography Day Tampa. And this is probably the fourth or fifth year that Jim has done this. It's Saturday, March 30th. It's at the Garden Club of St. Petersburg. And it runs from about 9 to 5, but you can come in, leave when you need to and things. But it's there is a fee. It includes a lunch. You'll need to register on Jim's website to do this, and it's the Photographic Arts Society of Florida. And so if you go to their site, which is www.photographicartsociety.org, that will get you to his registration page and some things you can learn all about it. But the really cool thing is some of the guest speakers. He's set this one up as basically dealing with portrait photography.
Wow!
And so I'm not going to go into it a lot. Hopefully we'll get a call in and we'll talk a little more about that. But if not, I'll throw some more details out later. And so the other thing that I've got while we're going through some things is This Week in Photography History. And you and I had a chance to chat for just a minute before the show about one of the great street photographers of the 20th century named Gary Winogrand.
Yes.
He passed away March 19th, 1984, so 29 years ago. He was in Tijuana, Mexico, getting cancer treatment when he passed. But he was, to coin a phrase, the quintessential street photographer of the latter half of the 20th century. And the thing that always, people just never realized what a prolific shooter he was.
I was just going to say, talk about some of the amount of film and images that he has done.
Yeah, it was just amazing. At the time of his death, he left about 2,500 rolls of film that had never even been developed. They're just film still sitting in the canisters. He had 6,500 rolls of film where the film had been developed, but it hadn't even been contact printed or anything done with it. So now you're looking at 9,000 rolls of film. He had never even seen what he shot. And then he left about 3,000 rolls of film where they had been developed and just contact printed, but no working prints or anything. And chances are he may never even looked at most of those contact sheets. Upon his death, his archive was given to the Center for Creative Photography, and at that time, they received about 20,000 fine art and work prints of Gary's, 20,000 contact sheets, 100,000 negatives, 30,000 color slides, and then some Polaroids and a small amount of 8mm motion picture film. So what a prolific shooter Gary was. And worked in New York City, had some great shows. He even did a show with Diane Arbus that we talked about last weekend, or last Sunday, because it was an anniversary of her birthday. So this week it's Gary Winogrand. Check him out if you Google him or if you just Google him. You'll pull up some great information on him, and click the image link.
Yeah,
and
I'm just going to say, look at some of those.
Look at some of those amazing pictures. Yeah, the Tampa Art Museum had a show of his about 2 years ago. Just a stunning show when it was just amazing black and white work. So that's this week in photography. So accessories, you think some of them might be necessities? And,
I think there are some that if you're really serious about photography, that
sure.
You need to consider pretty close to a necessity, if not a necessity.
All right. So what leads your list?
What leads my list is probably a tripod.
Tripod? I would have to go along with that. I remember reading an article, I just stumbled upon it a week or so ago on Luminous Landscape, where Michael Reichman was lengthy article where he described it as the #1 photographic accessory, and I think it would be termed a necessity if you want to take your picture making to the next level, as we say now. It's really what separates a lot of amateurs from professionals in a lot of types of photography. Now, having just talked about Gary Winogrand, street photography, you typically don't use a tripod for that, but nature photography, landscape photography, your best photographers are all using tripods the vast majority of the time.
Absolutely.
So do you have some brands you recommend, or what do you think people ought to look at if they were to go out and look at a tripod?
Well, I think it's pretty difficult not to kind of lead with Manfrotto.
Right.
They're an Italian manufacturer, own some other brands at this point, but they started out making a high-quality, durable tripod that was, for the quality that you were getting, pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah.
And many of their better tripods you can kind of look at as just about a lifetime investment.
Definitely. They fill the mid to upper mid range.
Yeah.
They don't typically make the very best tripods out there.
No.
But a couple of their brands, they own Gitzo now, which is certainly one of the premier carbon fiber tripods, and one of those where if you buy a Gitzo and you give it reasonable care, it can last you the rest of your life quite easily. Yeah. And I would have to go along with that. The Manfrotto tripods are well built. Saying they're affordable, you're probably going to spend for a decent tripod, a couple $100 for a Manfrotto. Yeah. But myself and what I use, I purchased probably close to 10 years ago now. Was my second Gitzo. First one we won't talk about, but the second, well, that there was a divorce in there and some other things, so we won't talk about that first Gitzo, but I'm sure it's still kicking around. But the carbon fiber one I have now is about 10 years old, and I wouldn't describe it as indestructible, but I don't give my gear the best of treatment, but I also don't abuse it. And it literally almost looks showroom new. It's had a lot of field use, and I love that tripod. It's extremely well built, and all goes well. I'll probably never buy another one. Maybe a different head someday. But yeah, the Gitzo line is I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, that's really premier tripod right there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the Chinese, there's some of the brands that are Chinese manufactured that can be pretty good. Benro,
Sure.
There are other tripods out there, but I think the talking about tripods is going to a big box store and buying somebody with a name on a tripod that's not really a tripod manufacturer.
Right.
It's just having them made in China for $40 or $50. You're not going to get much in a tripod, even in terms of its functionality. They tend to be pretty flimsy, and you need a tripod to be sturdy enough to hold everything steady.
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole point. You know, when I get up on my soapbox about tripods at some of the meetings, there's a big fallacy in how people approach buying a tripod. You know, they've maybe heard people talk about it. They've asked questions in camera stores and read things online, so they've kind of come to this sad realization they may have to purchase a tripod, and they go about it backwards. They go, well, you know, I really hate the idea of carrying a tripod, so I'm going to find the smallest, lightest weight one that I've got. So they'll spend $29.95 on a tripod and find out that this thing is junk.
Yep.
And, you know, within a year, if even that, the legs don't hold up well, they're already starting to loosen up, and, so you put your camera on it and the thing starts to shrink or starts to fall over. And it's always amazed me that somebody, you know, they hate tripods so much, they'll only spend $29 on one, but they'll think nothing of putting their $2,000 or $3,000 camera on top of a $29.95 tripod. So, but then they keep going, so they find out, okay, that was a piece of junk, so I'll buy a $79 tripod. And, you know, so they go at it, and, you know, they go up in these little increments, and at the end of 3 or 4 years, they've spent $200 to $300 on junk, when if they'd just spent it the first time,
They'd have had a good one.
they'd have had a good one that again, given reasonable care, could last the rest of their lifetime.
Well, there's one thing that I always looked at a tripod in terms of recommending it to people, and in terms of looking at how well it's going to function.
Right.
And that is, if it's got a plastic head,
Right.
it is not going to be real sturdy. It's not going to support a lot of weight, and it is not going to lock into position. They sag with weight.
Right, and that's those plastic ones. They just don't tighten up right.
Right.
There's always some give to them, and that's frustrating for photographers because they have this great shot lined up, and they go to tighten it up so everything's locked down, and then everything just kind of and it drops, an inch, and their great shots no longer framed right. So. Yeah, the plastic stuff is junk. You need to get
You have a metal head.
metal head. Now, do you prefer, still on the tripod topic, do you prefer ball heads or the three-way pan heads that have a separate control for pan, tilt, swivel, those kind of things? What's your preference?
I'll let people do what they think they like, or not let, but suggest that,
Sure.
Try them out and see what you like. Personally, I like a ball head.
Right.
I think it's quicker, and there's a lot of times when trying to get the right shot, you're trying to move fast. A ball head is a lot quicker.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I currently use a ball head, but in the early days, they weren't quite as popular, and they were very expensive when you found one. But I started with a three-way pan head. And I think for some photography, particularly landscape photography, where you might, have a little more time to slow down, think, the three-way pan head forces people to slow down.
Yep.
And they need to think about their shots more. And maybe that's a good thing for some folks. But certainly ball heads tend to be a little lighter and a little more versatile. You can work with them quicker, some things like that. Other tripods that I'm a fan of. You mentioned the Chinese, and actually for Teresa, I bought her one for Christmas a couple years ago, and I got her a Chinese one, a Faisal,
Mm-hmm.
It's Feisol, I believe. And one of the things I was impressed about them is they actually have not so much a manufacturing facility, but an assembling facility in North Carolina. And all of their parts are readily available so that if you do have something break, you don't have to go back to China to try to find parts and find a distributor and that kind of stuff. So I think that's a consideration on some of these cheap ones is if it does need a part, you don't want to throw the whole thing out, but where can I get my parts? So that's why I'm a big fan of Feisol. And the other one, I don't remember if it was you or somebody else recently on a photo walk or at a meeting, they just... I don't even know what brought it up, but the question was, are there any tripods that are made in the United States?
Oh.
You know where I'm going with this. There is still one company. I just had to look them up on the web as we were talking about this. Davis and Sanford.
Yes.
And that was their big thing for years was that their tripods were made in America. And I don't know if they ever got into the carbon fiber. I didn't look over their site real well, but a couple things that I know that stood out was they also had a really long warranty, and right on the front page of their website, they've got a 10-year manufacturer's warranty. And that's worth something. And for those that want to buy a made-in-America tripod, Davis and Sanford made to pretty decent tripods.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been impressed with some of their stuff, particularly when you factor in what the price is. 'Cause they are not at the high end of price.
No, they're not. They've got some reasonably priced tripods. That are fairly lightweight. They're aluminum and such, most of them, and I think represent probably a good value for a lot of people today. So, what about monopods? Not really a tripod, but are you a fan of the monopod?
Well, I think they help in some ways. If people aren't familiar with what a monopod is, as the mono part is, it is one stick or one leg.
Sure.
And you can either screw your camera directly to it, or some people put some type of a small, lightweight head on it sometimes. I'm not sure what sense that makes.
Yeah.
But they're good. They can be used effectively if you can find a tree or a fence or something to kind of lean it against to stabilize it.
Sure.
It's of some help.
Sure.
You kind of use it by putting a little downward force on it to try and steady it.
Right.
In extreme conditions, they're better than nothing if you can't use a tripod.
Right. Yeah, I remember one time I had in a camera store I was working. A guy came in and asked for one of those three-legged monopods. I was like, I think we call those tripods. I think that's it. Yeah. But I think we see mostly the sports shooters using them. But for some of our members, I'm not going to name names, but we've got a number of them that also use them as because they've gotten a little older.
A walking stick.
It's usable as a walking stick to help them balance and some things like that. Which a tripod really doesn't work that way. You throw it over your shoulder, or you have a strap for it so you can sling it over your arm or something. But the monopod can work real well as a walking stick, and for some of our members that are 60, 65 plus, that's a big aid when we get into some of this terrain that's and you're in that age group, so you
yeah, right.
You probably need one. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's one other thing about monopods.
Yes.
And we talked about it, and I think it's not a bad idea because we're throwing around numbers of $200 or things like that. There's something that's an old photojournalist's kind of a trick, which is what's known as a string pod.
Okay.
And the thread on the bottom of your camera for a tripod mount is what's known as a 1/4-20 thread.
Right.
You can go to the hardware store and buy a 1/4-20 screw.
Right.
You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy a heavy string or a very light rope.
Sure.
Cut a few feet of it and tie one end to the screw. Screw it into the bottom of your camera. Bring your camera up to eye level and step on the string and push up slightly.
Right.
Not real hard. You're not trying to break the camera. You're not trying to break the string, but it stabilizes the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, that's almost like a Boy Scout kind of, thingy.
Do it
Something you
yourself.
can actually, you can, it's a do-it-yourself project. and you can put it in a pocket or a corner of a vest or something that's not going to weigh you down, and it will help steady your shots. So, okay, I think we've kind of agreed that tripods are a necessity as far as accessory goes. What's next?
Well, a little bit different.
Yeah.
I would consider a flash.
Sure.
I know a lot of people, the little built-in flashes, for a lot of people, they kind of view that as, yes, that's good enough.
Right.
My camera has a flash. It came with one.
Sure.
And I don't want to carry anything extra.
Right.
But the built-in flash is pretty weak.
Right.
And if you need flash, you know what? There's no substitute for power. And the accessory flash at a pretty reasonable price can be, these days, pretty powerful.
Right.
And then it allows you to get into other accessories once you've got that accessory flash. And these days, whether they're from an aftermarket manufacturer for a little less money or from the manufacturer of your camera, be it Nikon or Canon or whoever, they all work automatically.
Right.
You put it on the shoe, you turn it on, and it talks to the camera, and the camera knows that you're going to use flash, and it's going to take over and control that flash.
Yeah.
If you want it to.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this in a lot of the beginning photography classes
Sure.
and workshops that we teach. I'm a big fan of, what I used to say, if your subject has eyes, turn the flash on. It's probably going to help.
Yep.
And even if it's the little, what we used to call the popcorn flash up top, if the subject's within 10 feet or so,
A little one will help.
It'll help. It'll lighten up the eyes. So, and I think again you get back to your genre of photography. Again, if you're a street photographer, you're probably not using much flash, or hardcore landscape where you're looking
Yeah.
at these big vistas. Obviously, the flash isn't going to light up the mountain 20 miles away. But if you do much people stuff, your family stuff, certainly any kind of more formal portraiture, you're really going to need to get into a flash or two or something like that. So that's a good recommendation. Along those same lines, though, what do you think of some of these small reflectors that they fold up into a small disc, but when they pop up, as a light modifier, do you think that should have a place in a camera bag?
Oh, I think it absolutely does.
Uh-huh.
I think sometimes, depending on what you're trying to shoot, and typically that's some type of a portrait or people picture, if you've got somebody else that you can direct to kind of hold that flash, or not flash, but light modifier, that's a big help. They're kind of hard to use by yourself and put them on a stand or something, because if you're outdoors, the wind blows and they catch the wind. But I believe in those little reflectors.
Yeah.
I've always carried one. One of the other things that I really believe in strongly is something to soften the flash.
Oh, yeah.
And whether there's a simple translucent dome that's known as a Stofen, that's T-O-F-E-N.
Yeah, that's the manufacturer.
That's the manufacturer. They invented that little dome, as far as what I know.
Yeah.
And they're $20 or less.
Yeah.
And they're specific to a model of flash, and they just slide onto the head, and you tilt that head up about 70, 80 degrees, and it just spreads that light out, softens it, and you do not get that flashed look. It simply adds light.
Right. Yeah, they call those an omni bounce.
Yeah.
And I think probably a couple of the stores locally. I think when I've been to North Tampa Photo, I've seen them there for the popular Nikon or Canon flashes.
Yeah.
But there's some online stuff if you're really wanting to do it yourself. Maybe we need to do a do-it-yourself show sometime on little projects you can do yourself. But I've even seen online where somebody's got a YouTube video or something. I might have to dig for it. But it talks about taking one of these translucent gallon milk containers, cutting it out, and making like a little omni bounce for your built-in pop-up flash.
Oh.
He tells you, it gives you the little template, and You cut it out with like an X-Acto knife, and it'll kind of clip in over your pop-up flash, and it softens that. So that might work, and it's nothing else. As long as you don't cut your finger off, you'll might have a little fun do-it-yourself project. Yeah, light modifiers. I think you hit it on the head with the flash first. I think that's a necessity. Some of the bounce cards and all the other things are more useful accessories if you do a lot of
that type of stuff, events, weddings. If that's what you aspire to, you need a powerful flash, and you need a powerful light modifier.
Yeah.
Typically, what you see these days, Gary Fong.
Yep.
And there's a new one on the market the last year or two called Grasslon.
Oh, I'm not familiar with them. I'll have to look them up.
Grasslon is a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's hard. It attaches. It's kind of a universal fit with a strap, I believe, to the flash heads. But it is an intricate arrangement of mirrors behind the translucent face.
Wow.
And before it hits the translucent face, it spreads the light out.
Wow.
To give very even coverage. Some people that I think a lot of, and a couple of pretty well-known camera stores have started to carry those.
Wow.
And they're pretty good from what I understand.
I'll have to look those up. One of the brands that several of the camera stores I've worked in on and off over the years.
There's LumaQuest.
LumaQuest is the one
there
that I know
Yep.
of. And one of the things I like about their website is they have instructional videos on how to use their different modifiers all online on their website, and they're absolutely free. And so that way you can kind of, because if you look at his website, he's probably got 20 different modifiers, everything from small soft boxes to clip-ons to things like the Omni Bounce and different modifiers. So you go, well, which one do I use? He makes recommendations, and then you can watch the video and kind of get an idea of how it's going to modify the light and what's going to work best for your purposes. Very good. Anything else? Anything else on your
my list of
your list?
And it goes back to the tripods, and you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
If you're going to buy a nice tripod and you've invested in a good one, which helps you get sharper pictures,
right?
You're defeating the purpose if you're pushing the shutter button on the camera.
Oh.
You're moving the camera as you're trying to stop all movement.
Right. I see where you're going with this. So what do you recommend for that as a accessory?
A remote.
Yeah.
There's two kinds.
Uh-huh.
You can get a wired one for most cameras.
Right.
And most cameras these days, the manufacturer has also set them up for an infrared remote.
Right.
And that's a matter to me of personal choice, what you think is most effective or easiest for you to use. Obviously, the wire ones have, a limited range for the length of the wire. The infrared ones will go a little bit further, but, probably not much more than 15 or 20 feet.
Yeah. Well, and I've actually modified some. You can typically go to Radio Shack, and they sell, it's a standard connector that these companies use in most cases. Some of the high-end ones, they're 5-pin, 6-pin, and they won't work. But the basic Nikons, the basic Canons, I know for sure, they use a certain sub-miniature size, and you can go and buy extensions at Radio Shack.
No kidding.
So if you need to be 20 feet or 15 feet or more than what the cable length is, you can add that in. But cable releases are a big thing, and I think one of the neat things is, well, two things. One, the Chinese have gotten into it, and I can remember looking back just even 6-7 years ago and looking at some of these electronic releases that Nikon and Canon had, and they were hundreds of dollars to be able to do just simple little timing things. Okay, I want to take a picture every 2 minutes, or I want to time it out longer than what my camera can do. and hundreds of dollars. And I thought, boy, you know, that's just a simple little chip in there. They're really getting people. Well, the Chinese have stepped in, and so now you can get some really nice, sophisticated electronic releases for well under $30, $40 that do the same thing the manufacturer's $150, $175 one, and it even does more. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that, of course, you know me, I'm a little bit into the techie stuff.
Oh, I see what you have in your hand.
Yeah,
Nobody else sees it.
Yeah,
but
I'll hold it up for the camera. I've got my my iPhone here, and for Teresa for Christmas this year, I got her an app called Trigger Trap, and they make a real cool app. The app's actually free, and you go to Amazon.com and you buy what in the business we kind of call a dongle, which is the cable to go into your camera, and then there's a little black box that does the magic. And then coming out of the black box, it plugs into your headphone jack on your iPhone. And I don't know if they have them for Droid or not. I'll have to look sometime. But then you open up the sophistication of a handheld computer. And what you can do in the software is even more than what the Chinese are doing with these, you know, $30, $40 sophisticated, semi-sophisticated electronic ones. The phone ones, you can trigger your camera with a clap. Oh, yeah. They have motion detection built in, so that if it detects motion movement, it triggers it. The Trigger Trap is a really cool, and the neat thing about it, it's a free app. Not all the modes, but in many of the modes, you can use it with the built-in camera in your phone. So you can set your phone up to do some of these pretty sophisticated timing exposures and things. So I wouldn't call an iPhone or a Trigger Trap a necessity. But it's a really cool accessory in my book. I don't know if I'd go out in the woods without it. So,
yep. Well, let's take one little second here to just remind people of the phone numbers.
Okay.
In Pinellas County, it's 727-441-3000.
Yep.
Toll free, 866-826-1340. You can email us at picturethis.questions with an S at gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Give us a call, shoot us an email. And another thing, Cedric, the engineer, I dug into my box of stuff and got us a new webcam. And Cedric played around with it, and we got it hooked up in the studio here. So the folks that are watching the streaming part of it, and when we do the YouTube uploads, everything should be looking much better for you folks. And, of course, we've got great audio sound, courtesy of Cedric. So now we've got a decent picture to go along with it. And what else have you got on your list?
Well, it is an accessory that I think can be adding to someone's repertoire in terms of types of photography that they can do. And instead of, because for a lot of people it may not fit in the budget at the time,
sure,
but they see these neat macro or extreme close-up photography, and there's something that's called a diopter.
Oh, yes.
And you and I have talked about those.
Yeah.
A diopter screws on the front of your lens, and it allows your lens to focus closer.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of them. I think it's almost like you fall into the tripod trap. Mm-hmm. The close-up filters or diopters that screw on the front is a modestly priced way to see if you kind of like close-up or macro photography. But my thing, because I've coming from more of a landscape, nature, wildlife, I'm always looking for, a certain sharpness to the images. And when I took macro shots early on, years ago in the film era with those diopters, they didn't deliver quite the results. And I moved up the scale. My next expenditure, when I decided those didn't meet my expectations, was to go to extension tubes.
Yep.
But then ultimately a macro lens if you're really, really into it. But and these are kind of expensive. I talked about this at a Wednesday coffee a couple weeks ago.
I remember.
I am a big fan of the two element
ones.
achromat designs where there's two pieces of glass rather than a single piece that screw on. Canon makes them in two different sizes. They do the 77 and they do the, is it a 55 or 58?
Probably 58 if it's Canon.
Yeah, it's probably 58, you're right. And the 77s are a little pricey, but the 58s aren't too bad. But there's also a Japanese company, Marumi, that makes some that I'm a big fan of. Very few stores carry them. You have to get them from Amazon. You're not going to find them I don't even think B&H or Adorama carry them, but Amazon does. And the Marumi filters are very, very high quality. And the 77 was just a little over $100, as I recall, 110, 115. Whereas the Canon ones were more like, the 77 millimeters were 175 or something. So it was a bit more.
Yeah, the 2-element ones were always hard for people to understand because they were so pricey, and the single-element ones, typically you get 3 for $40 or something.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference in quality.
Oh, yeah.
And compared to the price of a decent macro lens, it's a bargain that'll give you some decent quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else have we got? You're a fan of the filters. I wouldn't call them a necessity,
No.
but they're a pretty cool accessory to see if you like macro photography or close-up stuff.
Well, and this probably fits into the accessory again, but I've always been a big believer in a camera strap with a quick release.
Camera straps. Now we're talking. Okay, so you like camera straps with quick releases. Why would that be?
Well, realistically, part of it is even a safety for the camera in the sense that when I mount the camera on a tripod, that dangling strap is something to catch and pull it over by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And if I put it on a tripod, click, click, and release the strap, and I feel a lot safer about the camera.
Sure. For a long time, I used tripod. Got my sentences mixed up. For a long time, I used straps with a quick release, and primarily because I used a tripod all the time.
Yep.
And it allowed me to get the strap off and not get it tangled up in the ball head, or if you were using a three-way pan head, getting it tied up in all the handles. But what I use today, which has become extremely popular, is a sling strap. Mm-hmm. And there's several on the market. Black Rapid is probably the big name. They make some. What I do like about the Black Rapid slings is they make some models specifically for women. So it cuts around the bust line, so it doesn't, rub and that kind of thing. And then they make some that you can attach like 2 camera bodies to, which can be awkward. But for a photojournalist, it can be helpful not to have to change lenses and everything all the time. But the brand that I use, which, again, you'd probably have to get it at Amazon or really look around for it, it's called Sun Sniper. And they do a couple of little different things that I like. One, where it attaches to your lens or body, they use a real ball bearing, not just some cheap stuff, but it's a really nice precision ball bearing with the steel balls and a race and everything, all stainless, so you don't worry about rust and it freezing up. And I've tightened it onto a lens once, and I have no issues with them loosening up. Another cool thing that's unique to it is through the entire length of the strap is a small steel cable. Because I guess parts of the world, I don't run into it, but you've got your expensive SLR, and you might be someplace, and with a razor knife, they can easily cut that strap, and they're off with your camera and disappeared in the crowd. So that's kind of cool. They even offer an insurance policy with every, it's included with every strap that if their strap gets cut, they will refund so much money. It's like $500. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, whereas most of the straps are just a plain, fairly thick nylon web, they actually put that like bungee cord shock.
Oh, yeah.
So it feels lighter on your shoulders than just having the web. You've got this nice little give to it. The shoulder part is padded extremely well. And I've got to say, I've tried several different slings, and I, after a couple weeks, went back to my basic Tamrac style with the quick releases. But Sun Sniper, I got a Sun Sniper one, and it was great. And I've been using it now for about 2 years, and I got to say it's probably the best strap I've ever used if you're not going to be using a lot of tripod stuff, because that's the downside. These sling straps, they all go into where you're going to attach your quick release plate. Some of the manufacturers are working out, again, what I call little dongles, where you can attach it to the edge of a Arca Swiss plate or something like that. But the slings, sometimes, you get away from using the tripod. Somebody has emailed us with another American brand tripod that we left out a brand. And I should have known this. I own some of their stuff. Really Right Stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's out of California. They make probably...
they're at the ultra high end.
Yeah. In my opinion, probably unless you want to spend $1,000 on a ball head, they probably make the finest ball heads in their price category, which is still pricey. It's in that $300, $400, $500 range. But they're now making carbon fiber tripods, basically to compete with Gitzo.
Yeah.
And Gitzo's finally got some competition. We've got several members that have purchased the Really Right Stuff tripods, and I got to tell you, I'm impressed with them. And not only that, they look really cool. They took the carbon fiber design and made it into almost a work of art, and beautiful, beautiful tripods. But they're at the high end. But yeah, they're American made, which is really cool.
Yep.
We'll go a little more, but somebody also has emailed us a question, so I want to make sure we leave a couple minutes to talk about this. So what else have you got on your accessory list?
Well, this is a big thing that we can kind of talk about a little bit, which is camera bags.
Okay, I'm a big camera bag guy. There was one time I probably had 8 to 10 camera bags.
You beat me. I at one point had 3. I think I was using
3.
regularly.
You're a beginner. Yeah, geez, you're just sampling them. Oh man, yeah. So what have you got to say about camera bags?
Well, and I think one of the things there's all kinds of them these days.
Sure.
There's camera bags on wheels that are rollers.
Oh yeah.
There's backpacks. There's the traditional single shoulder and messenger type, which cross the body, the slings.
Yep.
And depending on what you do and how much stuff that you carry, and maybe to a certain extent your age,
right?
There's going to be some things that make more or less sense on an individual basis. Pretty generally, like a lot of stuff in photography, you kind of get what you pay for, unfortunately.
Sure.
There's not a lot of free lunches, but personally, and being a little older than you, I still like traditional shoulder bag. I'm used to working with it, and it works fine for me. I know there's a lot of people that have gone to the backpacks.
Right.
If you travel a lot for photography, a carry-on roller camera bag can make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the think tank.
Yeah, and a bunch of others.
Yeah.
I mean, they adapted that, and they do a nice job, but, Tenba, Tamrac, all the big names have done
They've all
rollers
started to
for
go
years.
To it. Yeah. Yeah, and I own a wide variety today. I'm no longer at 10, but camera bags, but and I'm down to just 2 backpacks. Well, 3, counting a smaller one. But yeah, I'm not a big backpack fan. Maybe if I lived out west still and was doing more of that kind of stuff, going on longer 10-mile treks, but in a more urban environment, I find the backpack, even the smaller ones, clumsy because I can't easily get to the things that I need. So, but again, it distributes the weight nice. But that's, I think, one of the things of the sling bags that gives you increased versatility. One, you wear it across the shoulder, but the bag can also rest on a hip, so you're not carrying it all on one shoulder, and the weight's distributed a little bit. But it's easy to swing around, get it working in front of you, and then sling it around behind you so it's out of the way. Years ago, when I did a lot of video work, we were big with what we call fanny packs.
Yep.
And I used to, I had a fanny pack that was huge that it probably had 30 pounds of gear in it. And it worked well because, again, you wore it on your waist rather than on your shoulders.
Now, Tamrac tried to do that, or was it Low Pro?
Low Pro, Tamrac, probably both.
Both tried to do system, big, heavy belts.
Yeah.
And you bought different types of pouches that would attach to it for lenses and bodies and stuff like that. They never took off that much.
No, we've got a couple members that do that. And I actually, a couple Christmases ago, because I bought a system for Teresa. It was one of the Cata systems.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that you end up, and Think Tank had one of those, and I think, I don't know if Lowe had their something system or something. They called it Class 10 system or something. But you end up, you need to, if you get enough weight in that you're actually carrying something.
You need to put a shoulder strap on.
You need to now start getting it up on your shoulders, which was Teresa's problems. So, yeah, it works for a few people, but I think overall it's not the best system. The issue with shoulder bags is you're carrying all the weight on one shoulder. And that was the old thing back in the film era, when I was in Cincinnati. We used to get a lot of the photographers from the Cincinnati Enquirer coming in, and we all joked about there are no old photographers, or if there are, they go to the chiropractor about 3 days a week because, I mean, those old cameras and stuff were just incredibly heavy. But I've got something, what I'm using now, and it's an alternative to a bag because, like you, I always liked the shoulder bag, but now it's starting to get too big, too bulky, and I like to travel a little lighter. And what I do, if I'm just going out for a few hours, is I use a photographer's vest. Mm-hmm. And I use one that's pretty hard to find. They don't make them anymore. These are the original Banana Republic ones. But companies like Domke, I know the outdoor clothing superstore, Cabela's makes a real nice one. They actually call it their safari vest. But and it's cheap. It's like $39.95 or something. They make a nice one, but what I do is I'll wear my camera body and a lens attached with a sling strap, and then in the bigger pockets I will carry a wide angle lens or this or that, so I can carry 2 or 3 lenses very easily and much more enjoyable. I don't have the aggravation of the bag. The downside is, though, you look like a photo geek walking around, the number of people that say, "Oh, what did you catch today?" thinking that it's my fishing vest. Yeah, if I wear one into a store, they all want to know if I caught anything. But reminds me of, we had an expression, one of the camera stores that I worked in, is that it's not how good your pictures look, it's how good you look taking pictures that really counts, So, yeah, I think camera bags, I would call them a necessity. If nothing else, it's a place for people when they're not using their camera. Cameras should have a home. They shouldn't live in your dresser drawer or sitting on a cabinet someplace. Stick it in a camera bag so it's protected from dust and everything else, and all of your stuff is in one place. Now, whether you use several bags for different photographic situations or you use a vest or something like that, but I still basically use one of my camera bags for all of my gear to live in. It all has a home, and I know where it is. So we got time for probably one more. What's on your big list? And then we'll get to Dennis's question. He's got a question on lenses and such.
Okay. Well, the next thing that I would probably talk about is filters.
Filters. All right.
There are some that, at least one that I consider to be a necessity.
What would that be?
That's a polarizer.
Polarizer, I would go along
Polarizing filter.
Yep.
They do something that you can't do any other way, whether it's Photoshop or anything else. They change the light that's coming in and hitting the sensor.
Sure. Yeah, the way we used to explain it in camera stores was polarizers do things. They saturate the colors, and they will reduce or virtually eliminate reflections on glass and basically non-metallic, especially stainless steels and things. That, they can't do anything there. But and so a lot of people, when they got into Photoshop and things, they see that there's a saturation slider, and they automatically assume that it does exactly the same thing that a polarizing filter would do. But it doesn't, because you're right. It actually modifies light coming through, it rejects. When you put a good quality circular polarizer on a filter, you're going to lose about a stop and 2/3 of light. So it's like, well, where did that light go? And that's the foil, as they call it, that's in the polarizer that is rejecting or reflecting that light back out. And that's effectively non-essential part of the light to make up the picture. So that's why your colors are more pure, is almost a better expression than saturated. But the net effect is your greens are greener, your blue skies are bluer, and those kind of things. And it's a real cool filter. Problem is, most people don't want to buy good ones.
Yep.
They get talked into at a camera store or big box place, not necessarily B&H, but they get talked into some of these cheap Chinese ones. And, the chain that I used to work for, Ritz, we had a lot of these Chinese ones. It was the Quantaray house brand. And those things were just junk. I mean, I hate to say it, but they were terrible polarizing filters. And that's the thing. There's a few good brands. Hoya, they're better line of filters. They've got a decent polarizer. You've got B+W, the German one, and Heliopan. Marumi, again, the Japanese filter company that I really like. The manufacturers, Nikon, always made what I thought were
did a good
great
job.
polarizers.
Yep. Nikons, yep.
Yep. And but yeah, a polarizer what I would call it a necessity. Beyond that, they're really accessories. A lot of people will debate the usefulness of UV filters. Mm-hmm. And while, the expression is my lenses are naked, I don't use UV filters anymore. But for a certain for some photographers who may be getting a little older and they're more prone to dropping things, they're a little clumsier, and I know I am. I've broken some dishes over the last couple of years that 20 years ago I probably would have caught midair. I'm slowing down a step. And the filters can really protect your equipment. So if you're getting older and you think you might drop it or you have dropped some stuff, a good quality UV filter can be a good investment in protecting your equipment. But along that same lines, lens hoods.
Oh yeah,
lens hoods really ought to be a necessity because they'll do as much, if not more, in most cases, to protect your lens than a filter will.
A filter, sure.
Except for going to the beach on a windy day. The filter will keep sand off. That's kind of an obvious one. I would think that not putting your lenses in harm's way, unless of course you're getting paid to do that that job. Okay. Anything else?
Well, I got a feeling maybe we.
You want to get to Dennis's question?
I think we probably should get to the question.
Okay, this is from Dennis W. He writes, I'm thinking of upgrading to a full-frame camera body, and he specifically mentioned the D800 and the D600. Mm-hmm. And what are the issues using my DX format lenses on the full-frame bodies? So...
well, the issue is you're going to get circular images.
Potentially. The Nikons have, and I'm not sure if the D600 has it. I believe the 800 does. On the Nikons, you can set it to a DX mode.
Yeah.
But then you're throwing away a bunch of your pixels. So I look at those that have that DX mode, which is basically the Nikons. Canon doesn't do that. I'm not sure about Sony if they do it on some of theirs. I think they might. But I view it as kind of a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. If you're going to buy a D800, you're talking about investing about $3,000 in a body, give or take a few $100 and where you shop. And you probably, though, you eventually want to go to the FX lenses, the full frame lenses, to get the most bang out of it and really use it with all those pixels. That's the big thing about the D800 is it's a 36 megapixel camera.
And when you put the DX lens on, you're going to basically, it's going to go into a mode, what we're talking about, that is the size of the APS-C sensor. You're only going to use those pixels that are the size of the APS-C.
Right.
Now, maybe that reduces it to 20 megapixels from the 34 or 36. I don't know off the top of my head how to do the math in my head to figure that out right here. But to really get all the pixels that are in that, and that's a phenomenal camera with what it offers and has had some great reviews, what I would say is you need to go to the FX full-frame lenses. Now, you can work your way into that.
Yeah, and that's what it allows you to do.
But until you do, you're not taking effect of all, or taking, getting the advantage of all those pixels that are available.
Yeah. And so starting out, I think that's a good way to go, is to get on over when you can into the FX lenses.
Yeah.
But you're going to invest a lot of money in a body. Go easy on your pocket for a few months and use the DX lenses until you can afford their equivalents in the FX. And Nikon makes some amazing FX lenses in the wide angle range. A couple of the members know it, that I lust very, very much after the Nikon 14 to 24, regarded by so many people as probably the finest wide angle zoom ever made. And this includes Zeiss and some of the other German lenses known for their quality. Yeah, and I've got some things on my list as well, but our time's running out here. But I hope that folks can join us on some photo walks this week and take advantage of our Wednesday coffees at O'Keefe's on Fort Harrison and the Independent on Florida Avenue over in Tampa on Tuesdays, 9 to 11. So we're going to talk about anything next week? You got an idea yet?
No.
Uh-oh.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out as we go. Okay. From Jeff Donald, Lou Donald, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Our engineer, Cedric, will have this up on YouTube so you guys can watch it in a day or so. Thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great evening. Thanks.
Thank you.
If you took all the girls I knew when I was single, brought them all together for one night, I know they'd never match my sweet
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyrhills, Tampa Bay. Listen,